Some days ago, I randomly decided it was time to find some other content creators on YouTube for Arena of the Planeswalkers. So I typed in Arena of the Planeswalkers tier list, seeing what other people thought of the game. You'll be shocked what I found. Or what I didn't find. Pretty much everything were knockoffs of AOTP, Magic Spell Slingers, the Magic the card game. Things that, honestly, they're all just inferior to AOTP. Shout out to Two Bats Gaming here, though. He actually had an AOTP Strongest Color video. He doesn't look like he's active anymore, though. But other than his video, I pretty much found nothing talking about the power of AOTP cards. So I thought it's my turn to contribute to this masterpiece of a game. Welcome to a 5-piece series where I am going to be reviewing all 5 of AOTP colors in depth and giving you my thoughts on how powerful I personally believe each color is. One big point for me to make before I continue, in general, I think AOTP is quite akin to chess in that you want to do a lot to protect your Planeswalker, who's effectively your king. So, when I'm reviewing spells and army cards, I generally rank them higher if 1. They're capable of dealing direct damage to figures in general, which includes creatures and planeswalkers. Number 2, if they are capable of healing planeswalkers. And number 3, if they make it easier for your key figures to deliver game-winning attacks against hero figures and especially against planeswalkers. Number 4, cards that are dead in hand when you're playing against a heroes-only army will generally be ranked lower due to my own personal belief that the heroes-only armies seem actually quite strong and viable for the AOTP meta. Most of my positions are based on a standard 1v1 or potentially a 2v2 game of AOTP where the goal is either to kill the enemy planeswalker or to wipe out their entire army. I'm not going to typically consider things like capture the flag or odd kinds of victory conditions. I'm mostly thinking 1v1 on like a HeroScape or an AOTP map where it's like a tournament game and you're just trying to kill the other guy. So now that we've laid out the general guidelines for how I like to rank these cards, let's move on to the meat of this video. Green. In the Magic the Gathering, the card game, the theme of green is nature, instinct, life, growth, strength, synergy, preservation, and sturdiness. Let's review the general strengths and weaknesses of green before talking about the individual cards within the color. So let's kick it off with the top strength of green, in my opinion. Green has an excellent array of single-turn high power buffs. Green, somewhat like red, is ready to demolish any planeswalker or other important creature whenever there is a vulnerability or opening in the opponent's positioning. On command, green can get tons of power via cards like Titanic Growth, Groundswell, Leaf Arrow, Earthen Arms, Overrun, and Snare the Skies. Combined with green's generally higher threat range compared to other colors figures, this creates great potential for you to deal high damage via combat dice and end games very quickly. Also like red though, these turns will generally be few and select. When you attack, go for the jugular. Number 2. Great natural mobility and high threat range. All green planeswalkers sport great base range, and they have access to the Elf Rangers and the Kessig Rangers. Green offers range buffs in Snare the Skies and Nissa's own Keen Sight for beefing up the Rangers' shooting distance. Nissa and the Elf Rangers are extremely annoying to pin down when they effectively use their sprint and squad sprint abilities, and Equestrian skill basically grants sprint to another squad. Although Green's mobility isn't quite up to par with the teleportation shenanigans that Blue offers, Green still has great cards like Paths Revealed, Rapid Withdrawal, Sheltering Word, and Nissa's Expedition to grant their figures extra move and even disengage for establishing better positioning in a more organic manner, akin to normal movement in HeroScape. Number 3. Decent offering of enchantment removal and healing. Green cards like Primeval Light, Natural End, and Naturalize tend to slow the opponents down, remove nasty enchantments, and help green's own win cons, especially in dealing with blue's annoying hidden enchants and white's insane stacks of toughness buffs. Bountiful Harvest, Natural End, Sheltering Word, and Earthen Arms provide healing that competes with white's platter of heals, and Fog, while expensive, can be great in helping your squad hold ground by providing pseudo invincibility for a turn. And now the greatest weaknesses of green. Number 1, a total deficit of toughness enhancing spells. While green does have healing, which is similar to what white offers, green has none of the toughness enhancements that white has, which should generally cause white's healing to be more valuable because that restored life is better protected by more defense dice. For the most part, green isn't looking to defend against a bunch of attacks like white does because green's toughness is generally mediocre, but they seem to fare slightly better than red in regards to survival, at least. Weakness number 2, green has no heroes, only squads. In a strict mono green / Nissa build, the only hero available is the Eldrazi Ruiner. Therefore, all green creatures are technically susceptible to the many anti-squad cards and abilities in AOTP, especially the more debilitating ones found in black and blue. Additionally, there aren't many great supportive spells available in green for heroes. It mostly boils down to Earthen Arms and Titanic Growth, so making great use of the Ruiner with green sometimes feels tricky. Finally, I reveal to you my full AOTP color tier list. I rank green as top dogs, mostly because I believe their win cons are the most consistent against every other color. High range and high power typically means they can strike first and strike hard, creating great offensive tempo from the outset. I think one of green's tougher matchups is black. This is because of green's high reliance on squads and black's ability to erase squad figures quickly. Let's take a walk on the wild side and review each of green's spell cards, starting with the one that I think is the worst in the color, Moonlight Hunt, 30-point spell from Shadows over Innistrad. Green may be the best color in my opinion, but they have trash spells just like any other color. 30 points for Moonlight Hunt, and it can only target a creature, has a damage ceiling of 4, and requires transform figures to be adjacent to our target. The saving graces for this card are that the conditions really aren't so bad to meet. There's no range limit, no line of sight requirement, and if there are any transform figures, regardless of their allegiance, next to our target creature, then this card can inflict some damage. The problem is there are only 2 army cards with transform, which combine to a total quantity of 3 figures at max on the battlefield for a given player. That's a really low grand total when viewed in scope of all AOTP expansions. Luckily, Arlinn and the Kessigs are, in my opinion, quite powerful and should see play in most competitive AOTP formats, so Moonlight Hunt can deal minor punishment to those players. But at 30 points, I'd rather have almost any other green card in my deck. The next naturally crappy green spell, Naturalize, 20-pointer from the first Arena of Planeswalkers set. This card is basically pay 20 points to hedge a bet that your opponent uses a figure with enchantments on it to launch their next attack into the enchanted squad. This is a really tough sell in my opinion. There is too much potential for moments where an opposing figure with no enchantments attacks and triggers this card, and then nothing happens, thus Naturalized is destroyed with absolutely no effect. It is decent in that it can remove enchantments from even an attacking hero or planeswalker, but even if you do remove the enchantments, did Naturalize do it quickly enough before that enchantment earned too much value for your opponent? Additionally, since this is one of only 2 green hidden enchants, the other being Fog, and since both of these hidden enchants are triggered by attacks and therefore they somewhat deter your opponent from attacking the enchanted squad, your opponent might instead ignore your enchanted squad entirely and make an attempt on your Planeswalker's life, or even wipe out your squad via abilities or spells instead, which would also cause Naturalize to have no effect on the game. I find it hard to justify this card in most of my green decks, even for mono green. Another card that is naturally rubbish, Natural End, 15-pointer from Shadows over Innistrad. This one seems mostly like an anti-black tech card, since black has so many squad-hating enchantments that they want to put on your squads. But Natural End also wipes things like white's Stasis Snare and red's Burn from Within clean off your squad for you. In general though, this card is a bit too niche because even in the black matchup, black has so many ways to insta-kill squad figures that it's hard to take advantage of Natural End's healing. Also, I don't foresee most great AOTP players spreading their damage output thinly between many figures of a squad, and so the squad healing here feels somewhat unreliable when your squads will, frequently enough, go from completely healthy to destroyed in a single turn with no chance for you to intervene. It's just a low tier spell. I think we've cleared the cards that I hate most in green. Now we're up to Sheltering Word, 15-point card from Shadows over Innistrad. This card isn't really a whole lot better than Natural End, honestly, but it's nicer in that it gives us the option of healing friendly squads in a 2v2 game. But I think it's best to focus on this card's disengage factor, which can be clutch in rare occasions, especially when combined with Overrun and Paths Revealed. I think Sheltering Word is very useful, especially in the blue matchup, when trying to deal with the Leyline Phantoms and the Lantern Geists, so that you can disengage from them freely with something like your Pummeroots and go and smash, let's say, the blue Planeswalker. And also that blue tends to struggle with bursting enemy figures down, unlike almost every other color. So it's easier to make use of the healing of this card while fighting against blue. But altogether, I really don't care much for this card otherwise. Coming up now is Rapid Withdrawal, 5-pointer from Battle for Zendikar. While this is cheap and it's hard to fault a 5-point card, this one is really situational for 2 big reasons. First, 3 out of 4 of green squads, the Elf Rangers, the Kessigs, and the Path Wardens, have 3 base power, and most other squads in the game also have at least 3 power. And since green doesn't have any inherent way to permanently buff their squad's power, this card often doesn't make a difference for the 3 aforementioned green squads. And number 2, Rapid Withdrawal only really gets reasonable consistency with the Pummeroots, and that's also under the hope that black, white, and red haven't buffed their squads with enchantments which enhance their power. Rapid Withdrawal can be helpful in dealing with blue's annoying Lantern Geists because they have a power of 2, or when used in combination with Overrun and or Titanic Growth for maybe 1 or 2 turns of Rapid Withdrawal enabled disengages. And for 5 points, I think that's about all you can really ask of this card. It's a little too situational for my taste, which is why it's rated this low. Sprinting in now, Equestrian Skill, 10-pointer from Shadows over Innistrad. This is a decent and cheap enchantment that makes the Kessig and Elf Rangers even more annoying with ranged hit-and-run tactics. But a single damage marker on any of the enchanted creatures will break this enchantment for that creature. I find it sad that this doesn't offer 3 spaces of movement like Nissa's Sprint and the Elf Squad Sprint abilities. I personally feel that it doesn't offer much for green when Nissa and the Rangers already have their sprints, which offer a better and more consistent version of this card's effect. While the Pummeroots and the Kessigs will probably take damage quickly enough if they're frontlining anyway. At 10 points, this is not a card that I would consider to be crucial for green, especially mono green. Rabid Bite, 20-pointer from Shadows over Innistrad. This feels like a tough sell when green doesn't really have enchantments to permanently buff their power, and even worse, they have absolutely no toughness buffs. This card also has no effect against opposing planeswalkers. If green actually had some kind of big beastly hero, like you'd expect them to have in mirroring the TCG, and if they had a few more spells that could support heroes, this card would probably be a lot more useful than it currently is. So, Mono Green only has access to the Eldrazi Ruiner as a hero figure, and it seems to me that we mostly want to use Rabid Bite with one of our own big and bulky figures to extract the most value. The Eldrazi, with his base 6 power and 3 toughness, can, via fight, often delete a single squad creature while receiving 1 or sometimes even no damage in return. So Rabid Bite is more powerful if you include him in your army. On turns where I'm playing one or more of green's powerful spells like Titanic Growth, Overrun, Snare the Skies, or Paths Revealed on my squads, I don't really want to use any of my 3 spell limit on Rabid Bite, and I'd prefer to gun down the enemy planeswalker if there's an opening to do so, and Rabid Bite doesn't really assist me in that goal. However, Titanic Growth plus Overrun plus Rabid Bite all used on a Pummeroot, which gives you a 4 base power, plus 3 for Titanic Growth, plus 2 for Overrun for a total of 9 power, can outright murder heroes like the Ghoul Vanguard, Evasian, or the Merfolk Royal Mage, but it can also put your buffed Pummeroot's life at risk, mostly due to the lack of green's toughness buffs, which means your figure will likely take some damage in retaliation when you use Rabid Bite. And you don't want your super buffed creature dying before you have the chance to have him roll his massive attack value during your action 4 attack. Altogether, I think this card is too situational and costly, but it is somewhat usable because green offers some healing to help offset any damage taken via fight. Swinging in now, Elvish Blade Finesse, 20-pointer from Battle for Zendikar. Notice that this card has the magical figure word on it. This is a great way to deal 2 true damage to the enemy planeswalker, although it requires green to be a bit more aggressive than it otherwise probably would be. This works against a figure of your choice whom is adjacent to at least 2 of your elves, so if you need to prioritize something other than the enemy planeswalker, go for it. Considering green has access to 2 elf squads for a total of 5 potential elf figures in their army, it should be simple enough to use Elvish Blade Finesse as long as you include those army cards in your army. Bonus points because this card can act like a janky version of Red's Haste, in that you can summon 2 of your elves adjacent to any nearby enemy figure and then immediately play Elvish Blade Finesse to deal 2 damage to that figure. It can help to make your opponents respect your green planeswalker's summoning range, lest they suffer the Burst Assassination combo of Elvish Blade Finesse plus Groundswell, plus the Destroy Leaf Arrow effect for plus 2 power, which would give you insane damage potential and a pretty threatening chance to one-hit KO, or really one-turn KO, any planeswalker that is dumb enough to test their luck by approaching green's planeswalker. This is a decent card with an elf-themed army, but outside of that, this is definitely a low-tier or even useless card. Up now is Earthen Arms, 30-pointer from Battle for Zendikar. Although expensive, Earthen Arms is a satisfactory card, a wonderful buff for a category of creatures which contain some of the strongest figures in the game. The only hero that Nissa can use is the Eldrazi Ruiner, and luckily the Ruiner is totally worthy of Earthen Arms' healing. Plus 2 power is no joke, especially when we have the potential to use Titanic Growth in this combo as well. Arlinn can use this on the Mad Prophet. He is low cost and can nearly match the Ruiner in dealing damage against heroes and planeswalkers. Kiora has 2 blue ranged heroes where Earthen Arms can be applied to, and their Necro Alchemist is no joke when he combines his It Works ability with any number of power buffs such as Earthen Arms or Titanic Growth. And his high base life helps to ensure you'll have a reasonable chance to actually heal him with Earthen Arms. I would have ranked Earthen Arms higher if its cost wasn't so high. Compare Earthen Arms to White's Chaplain's Blessing. They are nearly identical. I like both of these cards, but the cost of Earthen Arms and Green's lack of options for heroes brings it down a bit in my opinion. I'd say we're about at the halfway point in my list. Here is Sky Reaping, 5-pointer from the Arena of Planeswalkers base set. Sky Reaping is up here mostly as Green's only 5-point sorcery. If you have 11 cards in your deck and you have spent 195 points, your choices for your final card are either this or Rapid Withdrawal, and I'm personally taking Sky Reaping almost every time over Rapid Withdrawal. The draw aspect of Sky Reaping is pretty decent by itself, and at this price, that is the primary reason why I would put this card in my mono-green decks. The 1 damage dealt to adjacent flying creatures is a good bonus, but a bit tough to reliably line up the situation, especially when the only flying creatures in AOTP are Evasian, the Core Aeronaut Captain, and the Flamewing Phoenixes. Additionally, this is a good bait card to play when Blue has one of their Hidden Enchant Planeswalkers on their Planeswalker, since a Psychic Rebuttal counter to Sky Reaping isn't really devastating when we're playing against Blue. I like Sky Reaping enough, it's a very decent card and worthwhile. Next up, Nissa's Expedition, 10-pointer from the base Arena of Planeswalkers set. A chunk of extra move and disengage should help you get your Planeswalker out of any sticky situation and or get them in range of their target of choice, maybe even taking a shot from the high ground. This has excellent synergy with Predatory Strike and or Leaf Arrow. With how much risk-free mobility this gives your important Planeswalker figure, and for the cheap price of 10 points, this card should rarely come up short on value. It has excellent synergy with Nissa's Sprint too, as it lasts until end of turn and allows her to keep her disengage while she is sprinting. I think I would use this card in every single Nissa and Arlinn army that I build, and I would consider it for Kiora, but I would likely choose one of Blue's teleportation options for the Planeswalker that is available from Blue before I considered Nissa's Expedition for her. It's a very good card, I really like this card. Now it's time to get lost in Fog, 25 points from the base Arena of Planeswalkers set. Although a bit pricey, Fog is a fantastic hidden enchantment when you are making a push towards a critical objective or you need your squad to hold ground. There are a reasonable number of ways for other colors to bypass Fog even after it is triggered, such as White's Fell the Mighty, Sunlands, and Silver Strike, or Black's at any price and Snuff Out, as these all simply destroy the squad instead of damaging it. In general though, Fog should do well enough at keeping your squad alive for the turn, because once it is flip activated via an attack, it prevents all damage, including spell damage from things like Incinerate or Bone Splinters, until the end of turn. So it has unique utility in that way. Next up, Primeval Light, 35-pointer from Arena of Planeswalkers set. Very expensive, but often clutch against white and blue, and sometimes even black. This clears out all enchantments on the battlefield and enables us to go ham with 2 other cards directly afterwards. When you play Primeval Light, you will want to have a plan to win on this turn or the next turn typically. Press the advantage while your opponents are magically naked and vulnerable. Yes, green takes advantage of the vulnerable. Didn't you know this is part of the color's core values? White squads can absolutely steamroll green if white gets their enchantments going for insane toughness numbers, because green tends to rather heavily rely on attack dice to win its matchups. Primeval Light laughs all of white's toughness buffs away and allows you to smash their figures. Blue's Hidden Enchant Trio can really mess up green's crucial win cons of Titanic Growth, Overrun, and Paths Revealed. Again, Primeval Light gets rid of those magical facades and can help your squads lay waste to blue figures once those nuisance cards like Call to Heal and Aether Spouts are deleted. I think this card is much more crucial for Nissa builds than it is for Kiora and Arlinn, and frankly I haven't often used it outside of Nissa armies. Green doesn't have many great long-term enchantments other than Leaf Arrow and Predatory Strike, while red and blue both have a wider array of enchantments which you don't really want to destroy if you can help it. Also, those colors have other great spells which are competing with Primeval Light's pretty high cost, so this card isn't as economical for dual color builds in my opinion. Still, the board reset effect can't be ignored, it's very unique. Now into what I consider to be Green's high tier cards. Predatory Strike, 15-pointer from Shadows over Innistrad. The Green Planeswalkers all have great range values, so this card is potent for them once they get a good foothold on high ground. This is about as useful as Leaf Arrow in my opinion, but this feels slightly less consistent than Leaf Arrow if you are playing on one of AotP's primarily flat maps, and or you are using Nissa, who will often be found skirting around the outside of the map on low ground, where Predatory Strike would get no value. On Heroescape maps with more elevation changes, Nissa and Arlen Wolf are unholy in their ability to get high ground, and Predatory Strike might even be better value than Leaf Arrow on those kinds of maps. Predatory Strike will make most low-range Planeswalkers sweat as they attempt to press into your high ground advantage, especially if you can keep creatures between the enemy Planeswalker and your green Planeswalker as they attempt to engage your Planeswalker. I've used Gideon against a Kiora player who had Predatory Strike and the Lantern Geists in their army, and let me tell you, it was terrifying every time she had high ground and she was rolling 6 dice. This card is extremely scary if you cannot prevent the green Planeswalker from taking high ground. It's just an excellent Planeswalker buff. Up next, the other card I just talked about, Leaf Arrow, 20-pointer from Arena of Planeswalkers set. Again, the green Planeswalkers all have great range, so this card is potent. It's basically Chandra's Fury, but with an additional option to destroy Leaf Arrow to gain +2 power until end of turn, even while you are engaged, which is basically like a gimped version of Groundswell. And it combos excellently with Groundswell if you want to roll a ton of attack dice for one turn with your Planeswalker. And hey, even Arlen Wolf can make use of that destroy for +2 power effect in her melee combat if you use Leaf Arrow in your Arlen builds. Many of the same things I just said for Predatory Strike can generally apply for this card, except that this one requires that you be unengaged in order to benefit. But at the same time, you still enjoy +1 power even if you are on the low ground with this card. It gets great consistent value with Nissa because of her 7 range and sprint ability, both of which help her to stay out of engagements. Leaf Arrow is pretty useful, although I do wish the price was just a bit lower at 15 points instead of 20. Coming through now, Paths Revealed, 15 points from the base Arena of Planeswalkers set. This is a wonderful enchantment to place on the Kessigs in either form, as well as the Pummeroot Elementals. Paths Revealed can easily enable your squads to murder your opponent when used in tandem with Titanic Growth and or Overrun. For Kiora, this has some unique uses with things like Welcome to the Fold to execute on some rather high distance figure movements. Consider the combination of her carried by waves, and then playing Paths Revealed, and then Welcome to the Fold to move that squad even further. Naturally, Arlen wielding the Blazing Firecats with 10 move is also pretty obscene, let alone how far they would move in combination with Seize the Day as well. Not much else to be said. This is a simple card for a simple win con. Run in and punch the opponent's lights out with a big move number and lots of attack dice. Groundswell, 10-point card from the base Arena of Planeswalkers set. A +3 power stim for my Planeswalker? Sign me up! This is basically Titanic Growth, but for your Planeswalker. However, I think Titanic Growth is generally more useful because creatures are usually easier to launch into power levels of over 9,000. Still, since you naturally activate your Planeswalker early in the game as well as late in the game, and Green's Planeswalkers all have huge threat ranges, this card almost never fails to get value, even if it can be a bit swingy due to the nature of attack dice. Combine Groundswell with High Ground, Leaf Arrow and or Predatory Strike for a massive 9 or 10 attack dice roll from your Planeswalker. This is another simple green card that just lets you roll more dice, and there is nothing wrong with that. Now we have Bountiful Harvest, 15-pointer from Arena of Planeswalkers. Heal 3 damage from your Planeswalker or a friendly green Planeswalker with no strings attached. This helps to prevent chip damage or a bad defense roll from killing your key Planeswalker figure. At an effective cost of 5 spell points per damage healed, I find it hard not to include Bountiful Harvest in every single green deck, even my extremely offense-focused Arlinn ones. Staple green card right here. Getting close to the top, Snare the Skies, 10-pointer from the Arena of Planeswalkers set. Here's a good, inexpensive boost for your Kessig Rangers, Elf Rangers, and Kiora's Illusionary Projections. Combine it with Titanic Growth, Overrun, and or Paths Revealed for unadulterated long-range devastation. If you park your Rangers near Nissa for her Keensight boost and play this card on that same turn, the Rangers will have a massive 9 range for that turn. It's another simple card with a simple win con. Extend your range and roll tons of attack dice. But even better, it helps you to keep out of your opponent's reach and potentially allows you to either maintain high ground or force your opponent off of high ground. In a game where range can determine where the battles happen, Snare the Skies is a great tool to have in your toolbox. We're up to green's second best spell, Overrun, 25-pointer from the Arena of Planeswalkers base set. +2 power for your squad until end of turn is worth it alone. Green's ranged squads tear things up with this card, and if you want to try and trample stuff, they can run in and engage all the same to make use of the trample perk. Combine this with 1 or 2 other spells like Snare the Skies, Titanic Growth, or Paths Revealed, and your squad is an absolute terror for 1 turn. Kiora can use Twisted Image and then Overrun on her Leyline Phantoms to walk through the enemy front line and murder the enemy Planeswalker with 3 attacks of 7 dice each. Arlinn can use this on the Firecats and or use it with Fire Breathing and Twin Flame for some hilarious amounts of trample damage. I often view this card in the same light as White's Inspired Charge, except Overrun is a bit more expensive, only works with the squad, and it doesn't require line of sight like Inspired Charge does. Additionally, I think green squads generally have an easier time making use of the +2 power buff here, where white squads have a much shorter threat range and sometimes suffer from traffic jams while trying to maximize their attacks. Still, it's the same concept as White's Inspired Charge. You're going to punch through the enemy figures like they were wet paper bags. And finally, we are up to green's best spell, and possibly the best spell in all AOTP, Titanic Growth, 10-pointer from the Arena of Planeswalkers set. The value of instant access to +3 power with a fairly liberal condition of 6 clear sight spaces, and you get to pick your choice of either buffing a hero or squad creature, all for just 10 points, it's just theft on the level of the 2020 US election. Blue has to pay 35 points for Royal Mage's Trick just to have a chance to get 3 or even +4 power. In my opinion, this is hands down the best spell in the game due to how insanely threatening it is in combination with the Kessigs, but it remains very powerful and efficient even if the Kessigs aren't in the picture. Say we enhance the Eldrazi Ruiner instead. No figure wants to face 9 or more attack dice from that monster either. Underestimate the Titanic Growth and Kessig double attack at your own risk. And it gets hilariously more overpowered when you combine something like Arlinn and Twin Flame with this combo, or Kiora and Royal Mage's Trick to astronomically buff that Kessig Ranger's attack even more. I dare you to name a more iconic and game-warping spell figure duo in AOTP. Alright, now we're moving on to green's creatures. And to kick it off, the worst green creature in my opinion, Path Wardens, 100 pointers from the Battle for Zendikar set. I honestly haven't really used these guys much, but on paper they're somewhere in between just below average and really bad. I'm not really a fan of defensive things in AOTP, especially not an expensive, defensive, 2-man unique squad that comes in at 50 points per figure. Just like almost all other squads, this one is easily destroyed and or disturbed by the many anti-squad effects in black and blue, things like Snuff Out, At Any Price, Bone Splinters, Unsummon, and Welcome to the Fold. Heck, Escort's adjacency requirement makes your creatures prime targets for things like Black's Killing Wave and even White's Fell the Mighty. However, granting creatures full immunity to attacks from anything but an adjacent enemy figure is nothing to scoff at. This even prevents non-adjacent planeswalkers from attacking any small or medium creature under the protection of your Path Warden. Perhaps this is a good way to gain a foothold near an important piece of high ground with your Pummelroots. However, the problem afterward is spending your turns to reposition these elves instead of generating more offensive pressure with the other squads at your disposal. I don't feel that the Path Wardens contribute significantly, if at all, to Green's general strategy of high mobility and dropping nukes via attack dice on key enemy figures. I'm just not impressed with the Path Wardens. Taking a lunge forward in viability, in my opinion, the Elf Rangers, 80 pointers from the Arena of Planeswalkers set. In my opinion, the role of these guys nearly completely conflicts and overlaps with Nissa as a ranged hit and run figure. If your Planeswalker is kept somewhere safe from enemy threats, then I believe it is very reasonable to continuously use these guys to annoy the hell out of your opponent. However, I think it is silly to attempt to alternate between using the Elf Rangers and your other army cards to poke the opponent. The Rangers will likely need constant activation to remain out of combat via their sprint ability. To illustrate, if my opponent places their 3 Leyline Phantoms nearby to threaten both my Planeswalker and my Elf Rangers, and thus push comes to shove, I'm taking my next turn with my Planeswalker to get her out of harm's way and leave the sleeping elves to be feasted on by the whatever race the Leyline Phantoms are. Yes, the elves need to keep moving, but the situations where any Planeswalker should be handed over to nearly certain death should be extremely niche and or calculated, even in kill 'em all scenarios. I often find myself using these guys either as straight up sacrificial meat shields in the early mid game because their base life of 3 really is decent, or I'll use them as endgame cleanup figures where they can continuously annoy and poke and run away when it comes to their turn. I personally don't think there's much of an in-between role for them. Still, a very decent squad and definitely much better than the Path Wardens in my opinion. Next step up the green hierarchy, Pummelroot Elementals, 90 pointers from the Arena of Planeswalkers set. These guys are reasonable frontline fighters for green. 4 power and trample are certainly wonderful to have as a base. While they are really similar to the rocks, I think that the Pummelroots have access to better spells and that their better base stats make up for their lack of battle formation. Pummelroots can put in major hurt on almost anything within their threat range, be it an exposed hero or planeswalker or a group of squad figures. Their threat range is a little bit disappointing at 5 move plus 1 range for a total of 6 spaces though, putting them in league with many of the slowest black and white figures which have the shortest threat ranges in AOTP. In a pinch, their mobility can be significantly boosted by Paths Revealed, and they can even obtain Disengage via Sheltering Word though. And if you toss in other buffs like Titanic Growth or Overrun into the stack, the Pummelroots can demolish things via Trample, especially when dealing with Black's Restless Zombies or Red's Flamewing Phoenixes. I don't think the Pummelroots are anything too special, but they are certainly good fighters for green. And now, the best creatures in green, potentially the best creatures in all of AOTP, the Kessig Rangers / Ravagers, 90 pointers from Shadows over Innistrad. Yes, these guys have my vote for the most influential and powerful creature in the game. Although they are a 2-man squad, They offer a great 5 move plus 5 range for a total threat range of 10 spaces. Their Hunt at Dawn/Dusk ability makes it such that all buffs you place on that chosen Kessig figure will get you a double dip effect. Consider Titanic Growth. When you select one Kessig figure for both Titanic Growth and the Hunt at Dawn double attack, that guy will be attacking twice with 6 dice, and this is still before other modifiers such as glyphs, height, and other spells, any of which will make him more astronomically powerful. Even better, the Hunt at Dawn/Dusk ability takes effect at the start of their turn even if only one of the Kessig creatures remain, which means an opponent must slay both of the Kessigs to be truly safe from the Green Machine murder combo. I don't often transform these guys unless an opposing Eldrazi Ruiner is approaching, so that I can get them into melee range on the next turn in order to bypass his otherworldly non-adjacent defense boost, but transforming these guys into the Kessig Ravagers does give them a significant toughness boost up to 4, which makes them a lot tankier. By the nature of Hunt at Dawn/Dusk's at start of turn clause, a green player is given some relief in knowing that an opposing red and or blue opponent is completely incapable of tapping into the sweet sauce of the Kessigs via things like Mind Control, Welcome to the Fold, Malevolent Whispers, and Dissension in the Ranks, because these cards do not enable anybody to take a turn with the Kessigs, they simply allow a move and or attack. You must make serious sounding threats about using your opponent's AOTP set for firewood and using their Eldrazi Ruiner's arm to cook marshmallows over the fire if they try and attack twice under the guise of your Kessig Ranger's Hunt at Dawn/Dusk ability. It works. I may or may not have friends that know from experience. Be sure to use these guys at least once in an Arlen build and in a Kiora build. Arlen enables a completely disgusting Titanic Growth plus Twin Flame combo on a double attacking Kessig, while Kiora can use Titanic Growth plus Royal Mage's Trick if you want to roll 10 attack dice 2 times in one turn. In my opinion, the Kessigs elevate the threat of all green armies simply by them existing in the army. This is the premier offensive squad, no doubt about it. Okay, time for me to stop drooling over the Kessigs. Let's move on to Green Planeswalkers. And the first one in line is one that I think is better than most Planeswalkers, but I do name her the weakest Green Planeswalker, Nissa. 330 points from Arena of Planeswalkers. In my opinion, Nissa is one of the few Planeswalkers that consistently has a unique impact on her games, instead of just being a summoning and spellcasting bot. Sprint, in tandem with her high range of 7, gives her unparalleled capacity in dictating where the general fighting will occur, especially in the late game. In some cases, it can be optimal to run and gun with her in the early game by moving around the map and poking enemies until she gets cornered, and that is when you summon your damage-soaking green slaves and slow your activations with her. Base 7 life and 4 toughness means she's a bit tankier than most Planeswalkers, while Sprint and Nissa's Expedition helps to ensure she will more easily achieve high ground while defending, or even that she might not have to defend at all if she manages to skirt her way out of the enemy's threat range. Her access to Bountiful Harvest extends her life and the insanity for even longer. Additionally, her sprint ability allows her to cross over a single-space river of water in a single turn. It's not a massive boon or anything, but it gives her additional options against range 1 figures where she may jump into water, attack a figure, and then use her sprint to get out of the water and potentially face no retaliation during the opponent's turn. She is an excellent cleanup figure in the endgame phase, and this is perfect for her role as a Planeswalker, because in most AOTP games, you want your Planeswalker to be one of the last figures alive, so that you have the chance to use your spells and creatures in the early and mid-game phases. Pick a god and pray if you are ever found in an endgame situation where you have to chase an opposing Nissa around the map with a ragtag crew of range 1 figures. If it weren't for her base weak power of 3, I think Nissa would easily be a top tier standalone Planeswalker. But even as she currently is, I don't think she's very far from the top. Nissa's offense is pretty easily supplemented via Leaf Arrow, Predatory Strike, Groundswell, as well as her capacity to gain high ground via Sprint and Nissa's Expedition. Mono Green is a great color to be locked to. They offer many powerful and unique spells and abilities, although sadly they lack access to any hero creature outside of the universally available Eldrazi Ruiner. As you should already know, her access to the Kessig Rangers, as well as silly strong green spells like Titanic Growth, Snare of the Skies, Overrun, Leaf Arrow, and Groundswell all boost the expected strength of her builds. Next up is the only blue-green Planeswalker in AOTP, Kiora, 345 pointer from Battle for Zendikar. I'd probably rate Kiora approximately the same as Jace Investigator if she was mono blue, because her stats and abilities aren't anything special in my opinion. However, her access to powerful green spells like Groundswell, Titanic Growth, Overrun, Bountiful Harvest, as well as her ability to bring the Kessig Rangers in her builds all prop up her armies quite a bit. And yes, I am that biased towards green stuff. I'm not a massive fan of any of Kiora's 3 abilities, but Carry by Waves should pretty easily get value each game. The ability to move one of your creatures, which includes a hero creature, up to 4 spaces at the start of Kiora's turn is a great way to coordinate army movement for flanking your opponent, locking up their figures into engagement with yours so Kiora can flee, or to retreat an important creature while also still using Kiora to do regular Planeswalker things and maybe even use her on the offensive. However, Carry is slightly at odds with what I think is Kiora's weak base offenses. Why do I want to take a turn with Kiora after I've summoned squads, when I could just take a turn with those squads to move and then slay things with them directly? Of course, Kiora can, for a turn or two, deal some good damage with the help of spells like Groundswell, Leaf Arrow, and Predatory Strike, but full squad activations will likely get more damage per turn. Carry by Waves is probably better in the mid to late stage of the game when squad figures have been dwindled and perhaps your greatest efficiency would come from using Kiora anyway. Notably, Carry by Waves occurs at the same time as the Illusionary Projection's Illusionary Deception, which is at the start of your blue Planeswalker's turn. So, when activating Kiora, you could use Carry by Waves first to move a projection, and then swap Kiora with that projection via Illusionary Deception for an interesting maneuver.
Of course. Interesting maneuver.
Where perhaps afterwards you could summon more creatures at her new position. Oh, and I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you AOTP's biggest secret. Kiora is the 8th wonder of the world. You haven't experienced life until you've endowed your Hunt at Dawn/Dusk Kessig figure with Titanic Growth and a maxed out Royal Mage's Trick at least once during your planeswalking adventures. Your ego will be so inflated while you stroll around the map with the ability to roll 2 attacks of 10 dice per attack. It's an exhilarating feeling. I can't recommend it enough if you're trying to ruin a friendship. And one additional suggestion. Try using the Eldrazi Ruiner combined with Essence Lux, Titanic Growth, and Royal Mage's Trick for some surprise 13 dice one-hit KOs against Planeswalkers. Okay, I have to quit gushing at this color combination at some point, so suffice it to say that the Beastly Burst offense of green loves to use the insane mobility and spell trickery that is provided by blue. There are so many wonderful creature and spell combinations to be found in this color duo. Due to this, Kiora is a top-tier Planeswalker, in my opinion. And we have arrived at who I think is one of the strongest Planeswalkers in the game, Arlinn, 340 points from Shadows over Innistrad. The offensively destructive potential of the combination of red and green is insane. Nearly this fact alone makes Arlinn a top-tier Planeswalker. I don't think Arlinn is particularly strong as a standalone figure. She's utterly frail at base 6 life and 3 toughness, and her base move is weak at 5. This is all slightly mitigated by what is available to her in both green, red, and her transform ability. She gets Bountiful Harvest, Arlen Wolf having 4 toughness and 7 move, and she has access to 2 haste army cards in the Firecats and Mad Prophet, which help clear out nearby threats in a pickle, or apply additional instant offensive pressure in situations where she is aggressing. Speaking of Arlen Wolf, her transform ability is quite fun and unique. You can play at 7 range with her Archmage's Assault ability to potentially deal true damage to a Planeswalker at the end of her turn, or you can transform and play as Arlen Wolf and go into melee range with her 5 power and Howl, which grants a +1 power counter to one of her unique squads on each turn where she deals combat damage. With her access to creatures like the Pummelroots, the Firecats, the Elf Rangers, and of course the mighty Kessigs, no opponent wants Howl triggering multiple times. When you use Titanic Growth plus Twin Flame plus the Kessig Ranger double attack, you will hear your opponent's tears and drink the lamentations of their birthing persons. Arlen's access to Twin Flame and Titanic Growth at the same time allows her to threaten any Planeswalker if she can get even one squad figure near them. I think Arlen's builds lie primarily in a mix of 2 playstyles. One, a true damage spam build, which uses things like Archmage's Assault, Elvish Blade Finesse, Circle of Flame, Pyroclasm, Incinerate, etc., all in an effort to assassinate an enemy Planeswalker very quickly. Or a Buckets of Attack dice build, which uses things like Howl, Overrun, Twin Flame, Fire Breathing, Titanic Growth, all permitting tons of attack dice to be tossed and using brute force to destroy everything. With everything available to Arlen, I feel like it is very hard to defensively counter everything she can do. This is why I think she is one of the best, if not the best, Planeswalker. And now, the natural ending and conclusion of the video. To describe AotP Green in a few words, it's the adaptive predator, awaiting the opening to lunge in for the kill. Green offers a good slew of raw movement buffs, although it's not on par with blue shenanigans, as well as some ranged options and buffs which allow them to often strike first. Combined with power stim spells like Groundswell, Overrun, and Titanic Growth, when you find that opportunity to pound a crucial figure, you will likely make it count. Naturally, if you were a good person, you would have already clicked the like and subscribe buttons. I'm going to release a very short video covering the colorless Eldrazi creatures and their general uses with each color, so keep an eye out for that one, and watch my other color tier list review videos if you haven't already. Thank you for watching.